Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Am I Doing This Wrong? We missed you so much, and we just have to say technical difficulties happen once in a while.
I know.
But we hope you had a great end of the summer and are getting ready for fall. And we are so excited to be back with a brand new episode. So get ready
Yeah.
for it.
Yes, I know.
Yeah, so let's check in. How you doing, Ryan?
Good. Yeah, good. I just worked a drag show earlier today, so that was really fun and a really good time. I was a little bit nervous about it, but yeah, it was a really good time and my husband came out to support, and so we met a bunch of really cool people. And it's really cool. Like, I've only ever known the LA drag scene, and like WeHo. And as good a time as that is, it's really cool to kind of be building that community here.
Yeah.
So, yeah, it was really fun. We had a really good time.
Would you say there's any differences
Ooh,
between,
that's interesting.
yeah.
So, I don't know if this is just a difference just in like how the drag scene is evolving, but there's a lot more drag kings out here that I've been able to be a part of their shows. And when I say a part of their shows, I mean as an interpreter. So I interpret for like the music and the any speeches that they have or anything like that, which is really cool because there's a pretty large deaf community here. Um, and so yeah, so we usually have like a few deaf participants that might come. And yeah, it's really cool to be able to provide that access, but also be able to kind of like meet some queens and some kings. And this was definitely a little bit more like artsy eclectic. Like the song choices were really interesting. Some of the songs I had never heard, some of them were like older songs. So I always really like that part of my job because I kind of have to study the music for work, but then I get to kind of find out about some new artists. Yeah, and I've really been missing out on Kylie Minogue. I think I missed that like era, but Kylie
Oh,
has some good
yes.
music. So, yeah.
I am aware of Kylie. But it was more in my high school days when I probably listened to her the most.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
But my sister's best friend was a gay man. So of course, we were either listening to the Rent's how I bit my tongue. Sorry. So we were either listening to the Rent soundtrack,
Mhm.
Fergalicious, or yeah, like Kylie Minogue. Minogue.
Oh,
Minogue.
interesting. Yeah,
Minogue?
Minogue.
Minogue. Minogue?
Yeah,
Did
it's
you
G U
pronounce
E
the
at the
G?
end. Yeah, Minogue.
I know, but it could be like French.
I think
Minogue.
it's Minogue.
Oh, okay.
I mean, either.
Don't come for us. We're both fans.
Yeah, right. I know. Very new fan, but as far as like the pop genre goes, like I was like, oh, okay, I like this
Oh
song.
yeah, she's an OG for sure.
Yeah, I completely missed that notion. So that was fun. That was one of the songs that was picked for tonight. So yeah, it's been good though. Yeah, we've been gone for just a minute. Honestly, though, as much as we record, it does seem like a long time because it's like 1 week, and I'm like, whoa, what's going
Right.
on? But
Right.
yeah, but thanks for sticking with us and supporting all our side hustle summer shorts. Those have been doing really well, getting really great reception. And that's really cool because anytime you get to like highlight somebody else's, skill or business or whatever they're doing that, might be outside of what, we usually call like jobs or things like that, it's really
Right.
cool. So it's been good reception and I'm glad to get back at it. So, yeah. How are you doing?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. I'm doing well, it's been a good week. Got more sad news. I'm like 2020. Can you not 2020? It's not 20. Oh, Is that some COVID PTSD that just
Oh,
slipped
yeah,
out?
that's a Freudian slip for sure.
Yeah. Whoops.
I know.
But dealing with it okay. Had a good therapy session the other day, so that
Mhm.
was nice. Also had a funny conversation with Jose. So I thought you guys might laugh at this too. So we were talking about monkeypox, and we were talking about how it's transmitted. So it's through the mucous membrane.
Mhm.
So we were talking about, I was like, no sex, So I said, well, no anal sex. And he's like, well, no vaginal sex. And then we just kept going, making jokes. And he's like, well, no ocular sex. And I was like, is that a real thing that I don't know about? He's in the medical field, so maybe I'm unaware. So I Googled it just to double check. And according to the internet, it's just like eye fucking, like making eyes at someone.
Oh,
right. Okay, so when I first looked, I was like, eye fucking, is that a thing?
Yeah.
Like, how do you do that? But no, it just means, like sizing someone up from across the room.
Okay. I was like, that's a
Yeah.
surefire way to get pink eye, but all right.
Oh,
I thought it was just like a hazard of being like, like face cum or something, but I'm
right.
glad that
Yeah.
it's not that.
No facials. Yeah.
Right.
But I did find a fun fact.
Hmm.
How long do you think you should make eye contact with someone? Like, what do you think the standard is? If you had to guess.
So I think that differs because in my job as an interpreter, like eye contact is really important to
No,
just make
when you're eye fucking, I'm talking
Oh,
specifically in I'm
Okay.
talking about specifically in this context of ocular sex.
Oh, okay. Well, if we're going off of he's just not that into you, for the gay community, it only takes 3
Oh.
seconds.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
But I would say like 3 to 5 seconds, somewhere around there.
So the internet says 4.5. Good job.
Wow.
Look at that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh
So
yeah. If you're staring at me for at least 3 seconds is kind of like maybe you're just figuring out if you know me or not, but anything
yeah,
after past that, like we're
it's
ready to
on.
do
Right. And
something.
if it's like 8 seconds, I'm calling the police. Like it's a very specific window. Like
Yeah.
don't be a creep. But
Right.
yes, you were hit the nail on the head. Good job.
Nice. Now I know.
Right. The more you know. So that just made me laugh and I wanted to share that with you guys. So
Thanks.
anyways, speaking of fucking, we love to talk about that here. I mean, why not? So, we have an episode for you guys today that is a little bit of a subtopic of something we covered already.
Yes.
So, I'm calling this a fetish focused episode because we are talking about BDSM. Ooh, nice.
That wasn't a sound effect, guys. That was just me.
Right. She did it with her mouth. All right. So let's get into it. So, before we get into it, of course, as always, we're not doctors, we're not experts. We're just two friends trying to figure it out. And especially, with these fetish episodes where things can be, I don't know, interpreted, maybe misinterpreted, or they're a little bit more taboo of a topic. We just really want to let you guys know that we're here to learn. We've done the research. Doesn't mean we agree with everything. We really just want to talk about it and make sure that it's talked about because, someone's sexual preferences, as long as they are healthy and safe, are okay.
Yeah.
So that's what we're going to do today.
Yes.
And in the future. So
I know, exactly. No kink shaming.
Stay tuned. Exactly. Yeah. All right. So a quick history of BDSM and big bold on the quick. So mainstream culture often represents BDSM as reckless, dangerous, and unhealthy. Take 50 Shades of Grey, for instance. Christian Grey's reason for enjoying kink stems from his childhood abuse. Television crime dramas often portray fetishes as seedy, unethical lawbreakers. Fetishists as seedy, unethical lawbreakers. It isn't just the media that frames BDSM this way. Prior to the release of the 5th edition of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders in 2013, participation in fetishism and sadomasochism was actually considered a mental disorder by health professionals. So, attitudes about kinky sex have shifted. Pop culture didn't make kink the latest fad, however. Humans have always had a penchant for adventurous sex. A 2005 Durex Global Sex Survey found that 20% of adults admitted to using some form of bondage during lovemaking. Even back in 1956, a Kinsey Institute study revealed that 50% of people enjoyed erotic biting.
Mm.
Which, yeah, I mean,
Yeah, I'm part of the
Sure, it was more than
majority.
50. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So, and then it says, we may not be having kinky sex much more than we always have, but we're certainly talking about it more.
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. And that's like even it comes down to something as simple as like fashion statements, right? Like I know that like harnesses are usually only associated with like BDSM, bondage, which is completely fine, but now it is becoming a little bit more mainstream, which allows people to talk about it more and for it to become less taboo. But for the
Yeah.
people that are into it, they're just like, I mean, yeah, that's just a Thursday night. It's not even
Right.
Friday night, you know, it's
Yeah.
just every day.
Right.
Yeah.
No, that's true. And we will talk about that a little bit more. So let's get into the basics. What is BDSM?
Mhm.
So I found this great article, and as you guys know, all of our sources will be in the show notes. But they interviewed two different people. So one was a sex and relationship expert, and one was a bondage and fetish expert.
Ooh.
And so they had some interesting points to share. So BDSM is an umbrella term that refers to a spectrum of sexual behaviors and preferences that can be divvied up into the groups of bondage and discipline, domination and submission, sadism, and masochism.
Mm.
Okay. So, although some people think that BDSM is, quote, kinky, in some cases, it doesn't have to involve sex at all. The mental connotations of some acts are more of a turn on than the prelude of a particular act leading to sex.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Which I've actually just been reading a little bit more because of something I saw on TikTok actually, a TikToker that I follow there that is part of like the asexual community or as they refer to like the ace community
Hmm.
which was talking about the fact that like things that we consider foreplay doesn't necessarily have to mean that it's leading to sex. Like it, you know, it's a lot more about like the relationship, the connection, like, you know, being intimate, right? Which like
Yeah.
it doesn't always intimate doesn't have to mean sexual, right? Like they're not
Right.
mutually exclusive, which is a super interesting topic because I think a lot of times when, you know, people talk about like, oh, when we got intimate, that could just be like a really close cuddle, that could be a bath together, like that could be something that has nothing to do or connected to sex necessarily, right? So I
Oh,
like
right.
that. I like that separation, that distinction.
Yeah. I've definitely had a lot of sex. I definitely haven't had a lot of intimacy. They are
Oh, that's a good
not. Yeah. So that I totally agree with that.
that's a
But
really good point.
we should do an episode. I don't know. You guys let us know if you want to hear a comparison between the two.
Mm.
Or I mean, we have plenty of sex topics to talk about, but if we could probably get a little bit more in depth on intimacy, that would be
Oh,
interesting. So you
yeah.
guys let us know.
That's a good
So
idea.
yeah. So it goes on to say that many specific practices by lovers who indulge in BDSM are performed in neutral, mutually consenting relationships. The emphasis on informed consent is of paramount importance when carrying out a BDSM act because BDSM often involves varying degrees of pain, physical restraint, and servitude.
Mm, okay.
So, consent is key.
Yes.
So, all right, so let's talk about consent and safe words. Informed consent between individuals is known as SSC, which stands for safe, sane, and consensual.
Hmm.
So that is a term in the community. And then there's another acronym that they brought up that's RACK, RACK. So that stands for risk aware consensual kink.
Interesting. We did actually kind of talk about this a little bit on the fetishes episode because I remember one of the things that you mentioned was that make sure that your kink isn't only tied to, or make sure that you're not only interested in your kink because of its ties to a substance, because
Yeah,
that probably might, you know, that might be a deeper issue. That might not actually just be like the fetish. You might just have something deeper that you might need to express or something like that.
right.
So that kind of goes with that first acronym. That makes sense.
Yeah, that does. And we will have some terms for you guys at the end. So these are not our only lessons for the episode. um, so it's common practice for lovers who indulge in regular BDSM acts to introduce a safe word. which, when spoken, ensures that the current act stops immediately if things start to get out of hand.
Mm.
So it could be a word with no relation to sex at all. And their example was pomegranate. But the important thing is that you both agree that hearing or speaking your chosen safety word signifies that all activity has to stop until this situation has been resolved.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
see, this is how you kind of know that in like pop culture, things kind of get watered down and changed because safe word, like as a term, was kind of turned into like this joke, like, haha, what's the safe word? When like in reality, it's actually very important and like
Right. Yeah. No,
respected.
that's so true. Yeah. Respected. That's a really good way of putting it.
Yeah.
Do you have a safe word?
Oh. No. No, I don't. Now I feel like I should, but no, we like in
I
my
mean, I don't know, like, you don't have to get into or not get into, I don't because I haven't really practiced much BDSM.
right.
As far as, like, I mean, erotic biting, like, and that's the thing, like, I think that I don't know what's, like, the general idea or, like, if you're not as informed about BDSM,
Mhm.
you probably think it's very extreme, right? It's harnesses,
Mm,
it's chains and whips, so you're like, "I'm not into that." But
right.
we talked about this on the fetishes episode, back in the day, and also fetish and kink can be a little bit different.
Mhm, right.
So, erotic biting or maybe like even scratching or maybe tying your hands together, something
Mhm.
like that.
Yeah.
Those are forms because it is a spectrum. So even if you
Right.
aren't like being chained up to like a sex swing, yeah, and
Right.
blindfolded and stuff,
Mhm.
like
You still might need that safe
right,
word. No,
right,
that's a really good point. No, I was just thinking that in my experience, I think it would have been helpful. Like I do remember like this one particular hookup. I'm pretty sure it was in Santa Barbara or maybe not, I don't know, whatever. But he like really was into biting. And I remember he said some things about like biting him, like not necessarily on the penis, but like around that area. And I was just like, I wasn't really into it because I was just like, I think that I don't know your limit. And now
right,
thinking back to it, we probably did need a safe word because it was like, how will I know if I go too far? Like, what you're telling me to do is a little bit reckless and like scary for me because I've never done that. So instead of me just kind of like feeling it out to see if your face is like, into it or not, a
right.
safe word actually could have really helped in that situation. So good to know.
Yes, yes. I similarly had I hooked up with a guy, I think we were in Vegas, and he was the biter, and there was one point where I was like, "Whoa, no, like, that's a little too much."
Yeah.
So, same thing, and I think it's interesting to think about, like, if you're hooking up with someone at a bar, it's not necessarily specifically, like, a BDSM encounter, you're not meeting them at a sex club that, like, specifically caters to
Right.
people, who are interested in the BDSM community.
Right.
How are you to know?
Exactly.
Like, it's not like you go home with someone after the bar, and before you hook up, you're like, "My safe word is pomegranate."
Right.
I mean, maybe you should
But maybe
now,
you
it's not a bad
should.
idea,
Right. No,
but
exactly.
that feels like something that you would either have a conversation about with someone who's already a part of the community or curious about the community,
Mhm.
or you would have with someone who is maybe a more long-term partner, and you guys
Yeah.
have those conversations about what you're interested in
Right.
sexually.
Right, more communication about it. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, because people who are interested or at least curious in BDSM or any type of bondage or something might just feel a little bit awkward to like set that safe word up at first because it's like, "Oh, wait, what are you going to do to me?" When in
Yeah.
reality, the less taboo it is, the more comfortable you might feel like, well, it could just be something as simple as tying your hands up, which is simple to me, but maybe it's not simple to other people. Like just something as harmless as that, but even still, like if it's to your limits and you feel like, okay, like I need to get these off or whatever,
Yeah.
it's like that safe word could really come in handy. And it doesn't have to be this discussion like, okay, no, this is it, right? Because it's hard and there's a lot of nuance to being intimate and being sexual with someone. Like you might say things a certain way and it sounds like you're still into it, when in reality you're trying to be very clear, like, no, that owl was like worse than the last owl that I said. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Like, so I
Right.
could see how it could get muddy around that area.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And if you don't necessarily want to have a safe word, there was another option that they talked about, and it's called the traffic light system.
Hmm.
So pretty self-explanatory, but we'll talk about it a little bit. So it's very easy to use and popular as far as safe words go. Each color communicates how you're feeling and
Mm.
what you want in the current context.
Mm.
So, red means stop. Saying this tells your partner that you want them to stop everything they're doing immediately. It should be used when you're not comfortable, when things are getting to be too much, or you no longer consent.
Mm.
So, yellow means slow down. Maybe you liked what they're doing, but then it became a little too much. Yellow is basically saying slow it down or reel it in a little bit. It could also mean you're reaching your limit or you're bordering on physical discomfort.
Mm.
And then
Interesting.
green means go for it. So, use green if you like what your partner is doing, you feel totally comfortable, and you want them to continue.
Yeah.
So,
Nice.
just screaming green
Yeah.
throughout, throughout the house. I don't know.
I
I don't
know.
know where you are.
Yeah.
Do it where you want to do it. I couldn't think of
Right.
a clever. I don't know. Right? Just staring at me. I'm like, I don't know. I don't
Too
have a
soon.
wrap up to this,
R-
punchline. I'm
Right.
sorry. Stop looking at me expectantly.
Yeah, Morgan's like red.
Yeah.
No, but that's interesting. But I just think the biggest thing, yeah, is just like communication is so hard when we just put a weird taboo on anything sexual anyway, that having conversations, even when it comes to something as simple as like consent, like it's so important, but we just don't really like prize that in our mainstream culture. But I do think some things are shifting. I definitely think with like the younger generation, like Gen Z, I do see a lot more like talk about it, but I do think it's super important, like even stuff like that can actually be a part of the intimacy, right? Like learning boundaries and being able to like provide what your partner wants or partners want in the moment without pushing anyone to their limits, unless that's what they're looking for, right? But there is a difference.
Right.
So
Right. Yeah, exactly. And so, to go on about consent, so each partnership and context is different, and the methods used to negotiate and navigate a session consensually should be adapted to their unique needs and dynamics.
mm,
While everyone's needs are different, one of the experts here has some general advice for negotiating boundaries of consent. She says it is very important to learn how to properly and usefully negotiate with your partners. Seek first to understand and then be understood. Ask questions and genuinely listen to the answers from your partner. Seek to understand their genuine motivations and boundaries.
yeah.
And one thing it did point out was that no or stop or the safe word, it doesn't mean like you're in trouble or like, like,
Mm,
and so it's really important to be open with the communication in these situations, because
mm,
it's that person trying to be honest about reaching their limit or,
right.
their boundary or their level of comfortability.
Right.
So, but I think you're right. Having that open line will make sure that the person who's doing it doesn't feel like rejection.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
to keep this an enjoyable experience for both
Yes.
of you.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, and words like no one stop do feel very off-putting,
Yeah.
obviously for obvious reasons, which is good. If you need that word and you're like, no,
Right.
I don't need the safe word, I want to get out of the situation, completely fine. But I think having an unrelated word, yeah, pomegranate or something, like it really just kind of sets it up for like, I'm not saying stop necessarily. It just might be that this in this whatever we're doing in this action, like we need to like, yeah, like you said, slow it
Let's
down or
regroup.
whatever it is. Right.
Yeah.
Let's regroup. Exactly. But
Yeah.
yeah, those conversations can be really sexy too. Because learning about what your partner wants, like it means that you're actually going to want to provide what they want and not just get off on whatever gets you off, right? Because
Right.
their limit might not be yours. Maybe you're really enjoying it and they're like, well, no, I'm not enjoying it as much anymore. So maybe you need to do something different. But that's the best sex, man. And you can
Right.
actually communicate.
Yes. I just thought of the episode of Portlandia where they say cacao.
Yeah.
Do you remember that? Cacao to cacao.
Yes, exactly. And right. And it's like the safe word, which is being used appropriately, I guess. But yeah, until the point of the partner's like, I'm
Right.
over it. Like,
Yeah. They just start saying it about everything.
yeah.
Like go to talk to that cacao.
Yeah.
Oh man, that was a funny one.
That was a good one. Yes.
So just a couple last points on consent. So couple of big takeaways. Don't rely on implied consent.
Mm.
Yeah. Be willing to speak honestly about your desires and boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And don't think of consent as something to get out of the way before you can play.
Ooh, yeah. That's a good way to
Yeah.
put it.
Yeah. All right. So let's talk about the roles. All right. So, first role is the dominant. So, the dominant submissive dynamic is often also referred to as top and bottom. In the in BDSM, the top is the dominant partner who dishes out the spanking, bondage, clamping, and whipping, and the bottom is the submissive partner. That was a quote from one of the experts. And then she goes on to say, however, bottoms can also be the more dominant partner by demanding the top to perform certain acts of their choosing and even insist on switching roles.
Mm.
Yeah. So there's
Okay,
some
interesting.
variation there. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think I could be into clamps.
I'm glad that was your takeaway from my
Yes.
research. I'm surprised
Really
you don't have any already.
was.
Well, your birthday is coming up, so I'll just make a note for
Yeah.
Ben would be like, "These are for Morgan?" No,
Yeah.
he'd probably be like, "Oh, Morgan's so nice.
Yeah, no, exactly.
She's a good friend."
Yeah, right. Yeah, exactly. She listens. Communication.
Right. You're like, "Actually, they're for you, hun."
Right. Yeah.
Yeah, very surprised. So, all right, let's talk about the submissive role. So, the position of the submissive lover is, quote, one of trust and learning. So, one of the experts says it involves giving away the reins to your mind and body and allowing your lover to take them fully.
Mm.
So, while being a submissive is about relinquishing control, one of the expert we're talking about, she did point out that it is not to cease in having a voice.
Ooh, okay. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And then it was kind of interesting. There were some additional facts on this. It said a submissive lover should always expect a level of balance and be able to guide sex within the boundaries of their own desire without without pressure to exceed them. And then she said it's important to remember that by taking a sexually submissive role, you're not giving your lover carte blanche to use you in any way they see fit. So while there are couples who choose to live in a 24/7 dominant submissive relationship, not everyone who has submissive desires in sex has to follow this relationship structure to do so.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's all a spectrum.
It is. I know. That's super interesting because it's kind of like I've heard, like sometimes it's like who you are in your day-to-day life, you might want to exude the opposite in the bedroom or like sexually because that's when you're most vulnerable. Like for instance, somebody that might be very masculine, control in their life, perfectionist type might want to be a submissive in their, bedroom life or sexual intimate life, whatever you want to call it. Or it could be the opposite, right? Where if they're very dominant in their life, they might want to bring that out in the bedroom as well.
Yeah.
But I would say that like for me, I feel like as much as I'm just like a very aggressive person and just like, in your face, I do like to be taken care of in the bedroom. Like I like to kind of relinquish that power. But I've never done it to the extent where I felt like completely out of control, I guess, or, like giving that control over to someone else. But I don't know if I would hate it. I just think that like sex is just such a communicative sport and
Right.
I need to be telling people what I like. So it's like, I always kind of ride that line. Like I want to be taken advantage of or like taken, whatever that, you want to say. But I still feel like I need to kind of like control the
Yeah, I
flow.
think I'm kind of with you on that, but I've never been in that situation. Again, I've never totally relinquished control. I
Yeah.
think also you might talk a little too much to be submissive. Like one of the rules might be like no talking. You might,
I'm like, well, I'm out.
you might get red lighted because you're just too chatty.
I am. Oh my God, that's so true.
You'd
Yeah.
be like, you'd have your blindfold on and be like, but like, what are you doing over there? Which drawer did you open? Like
Exactly. The lube's not over there. It's in the
right,
second drawer.
right. Yeah. I'm 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 kind of domineering, let's be
Yeah.
real.
Yeah.
I've tried to practice self-awareness. I know I'm bossy. I know I am. So, but you could be open to many things in the bedroom. So,
For the right person, you could give up your like power. Takes trust though.
it,
So
there's the issue. There's the issue. Yes.
we can
I
be
think I
honest.
could. I don't know. Yeah, it hasn't happened yet. So, all right. So, if you're curious, as Ryan and I clearly are a little bit, let's talk about bondage for beginners.
Yes.
Where to start? Where do we
Yes.
start? So, it says to start with basic sensory deprivation. So, don't just necessarily jump into sex toys and all this stuff. You don't need to go buy, the harness and the whip immediately. One of the experts says to use a blindfold and see what happens, or maybe handcuffs, or maybe just tying, a tie or, string of your robe, or I don't know. What else can you? I don't know. Anything else?
That's good. A belt. Yeah.
A belt. Okay, a belt. Um, so sensory deprivation, which is of course one of the best and most important aspects of bondage, can be a little unsettling for BDSM beginners. So it's good to take things slow, regularly check in with one another, and after the session, reflect on how you are feeling. So, taking things slow if necessary and being conscientious of everyone involved. Everyone involves needs. Everyone's no.
Everyone involved needs.
Everyone involves needs. So I'm leaving that in. Is a crucial aspect of responsible BDSM.
Okay.
Yeah. So if you're good with that, there is beginners BDSM and bondage kits. So, a simple bondage kit is a great way to get started as it comes with beginners accessories that are great to experiment with and not too intimidating to use. And then it did recommend a kit, so I'll throw this out for you guys. Love Honey, which I hadn't heard of. I'll probably look it up after this. They have a kit that has plenty to play and experiment with.
Oh, okay.
So,
I like that.
yeah. So taking your time and moving through the gears not only reassures the restrained partner, it's also a wonderfully tantalizing way to tease them to even greater excitements, one of the experts says. There's plenty of time for dungeons once you get the basics down. And so lastly, have fun. She says, if you're having a go at bondage, you're presumably looking to have a little fun exploring something that you haven't tried before. And it's important to remember that. As well, no, as with all the good stuff that goes on in the bedroom, the top priority should be exactly that, having fun.
Nice. Yeah, I like that. That's interesting. Yeah, because it can be like an activity more than just, again, like the foreplay, right? Like it can just be like you just want to have fun with your partner. You want to explore this person's body a little bit more. I know that there is like a therapy technique where you blindfold one partner and they tell you like what they want to tell you. Maybe they feel, apprehensive about it or something. And they say it with the blindfold because it kind of gives them like that peace of mind, like not having, yeah, again, sensory deprivation, like not having everything happening at the same time. It's just like, let me focus on my thoughts, and I've heard of that like really helping because it kind of gives you the confidence without waiting for that person's reaction or
Yeah.
anticipating what they might think about it. So you're like changing your course of communication. So I could totally see the blindfold being more than just like a sexy trope. It's also like a way to kind of, yeah, play with that person's body a little bit, without, checking in every 10 seconds to see if they're enjoying it. Because they will have that safe word or, the colors, and then they can kind of tell you what they like or don't like without outright saying like, oh yeah, that's good, or oh no, I don't like that. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah. No,
Yeah.
absolutely. And so this article did bring up this Japanese rope bondage act called Shibari.
Mm.
Have you heard of this?
Why do I feel like I have? I feel like that was
Okay,
like on.
I couldn't remember if we brought it up in our last episode. I went back to our fetishes episode and I
Mm.
don't think we did, or we may have briefly mentioned it because we did cover a lot of fetishes or, types of fetishes on that like intro episode.
No, I think I've heard of it from a reality TV show. I think they did this as an
Oh,
exercise with like couples on like some Netflix reality TV show I watched.
okay.
So, yeah.
Okay. Awesome. So we'll let you guys know what it is. So, like I said, it's a form of rope bondage originating from Japan. Shibari is a Japanese verb meaning to tie. The more traditional and erotic expression of the practice is also referred to as kinbaku.
Mhm.
Kinbaku, meaning tight binding.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah,
this
you know
is
what
what
this
they
is?
Yeah, a little bit.
Okay. So it's often associated with BDSM, but the practice has evolved greatly in the last decades as it meets at the intersection of sex, art, bodywork, meditation, and mindfulness practices, and of Eastern and Western cultures.
Mm.
She goes on to say there is no one true way to enjoy Shibari and integrate it into our lives and relationships. There are a multitude of different styles and approaches, making the practice more diverse, more dynamic, and more beneficial than ever before.
Hmm. So, I remember that it was bondage, and I remember like they were teaching, each other like how to like, yeah, wrap each other and stuff like that. But I want to say that it had to do a little bit with like pulling harder on some points or like, but then they had to talk about the reasons why. I can't remember exactly, but does it explain like how to use the ropes or is it just bondage in general?
So I'm gonna have Ryann watch a video on YouTube and I'll leave the link
Oh,
here for you guys. So we
okay.
will take a quick pause in the episode here in just a second so she could
Oh,
watch and then let us know.
okay.
I watched it. It's just showing how to do the rope, the tying.
Okay.
And there are different ways, like you kind of have to explore different ways on how it's tied. There's like a basic form, and then you can get more advanced with the rope.
Right. Well, let me
But
just
there
watch it. Let
is
me just
I
watch it.
yes. So you guys have homework for this episode too. Definitely check out this video. It's only like it's less than 3 minutes long.
Nice.
Um, but we will take a quick break here. We're gonna go watch it, and then Ryann will let us know what she thinks. So we
Yes.
will see you guys in just a moment. All right, so we are back. Ryann watched Shibari. So Ryann, why don't you tell us your thoughts?
Yeah, it's really interesting. I I do remember this. Yeah. So it's like a series of knots that you kind of make to almost make like your own like DIY harness kind of thing. And so I could totally see that being like an interesting act to one, like learn how, just to like do a new kind of like art form. But at the same time, like I could see that if you were in the nude, or even with clothes on, honestly, but I could see that being like an intimate act of like learning how to like push and pull on different areas, wrap it around different
Yeah.
parts of your body. Like I could totally see that being like an easy way to lead to something like bondage. Obviously, you can pull the ropes like tighter at certain places if you want, but it was really interesting. to watch, you know, this creation kind of come to play with just like a few knots placed in different areas, you know.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's really interesting. I would love to see like a more intricate form of that,
Right.
you
Yeah. This
know.
was just basic. And from this article, they really did recommend doing your research. There's tons of information out there. There's courses, there's guides. Like,
Right.
this is, it's like yoga. You could
Yeah.
really get into this, like,
Yeah.
as a hobby or as a, I don't know what you want to call it.
Cool.
But yeah,
Yeah.
I thought, would you try it?
Oh yeah, I would definitely try that. I would just want to know like how to make it like because the video that we watched it kind of focuses on like the upper torso. So
Yeah.
I would want to know how like, you know, first of all you have to have really long ropes. But I would like
Right.
to see how you could make it like on other parts of the body.
Yeah.
And like I said, it seemed like pretty easily moved around so that yeah, if you wanted to focus on certain like pressure points of your body, you could do that. But I liked it. But I like that kind of stuff like intricate like uh different it's not costumes necessarily, but I do like different types of um I don't know what you would call that because like harnesses are one thing, but it does kind of look like that. And I
Yeah.
really like seeing like different types of harnesses and stuff. I think that's really cool. So it kind of reminded me of that a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
Yeah. Would you try
So
it?
I think so. I liked it too. I was like, ooh, that seems like it would be nice.
Yeah. Nice. Yeah.
But it does seem like something you could do with a partner that would increase like intimacy, like putting things in different places, like you were saying,
Mhm.
like the whole act of it. It's kind of a soothing video, like
Yeah.
watching her like put the knots and she explains what she's doing and the design and things like that. So,
Mhm.
yeah, I was like, okay, and I get why
Mhm.
it was in this article of bondage, like BDSM for beginners. It
Right.
seems like a pretty, mild like starter kind of thing, and
Yes.
it's not just like a leather and metal harness, which can be
Right.
intimidating. Like she
Right.
has like a
Right.
pink rope. Like it
Yeah.
seems very like,
Yes, definitely.
a good entry point, I think.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And so the expert who recommended this was saying that couples often explain that it deepens intimacy and trust between them in profound and unique ways. It's also an amazing form of physical exercise and intellectual stimulation, moving
Mm.
your body in new ways and learning a new craft.
Hmm.
The artistic aspect of the practice lends itself particularly well to creative expression as a new medium to combine with, it says aerial circus, dance, photography, film, or even theater.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this is BDSM for the creatives out there.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, looking at it as an art form, which obviously it is, that's a way to work in new things into your intimate life, you know, instead of just thinking of it as like, again, the foreplay, just kind of focusing more on just like creating art on the body, which is a
Hmm.
really cool way to create art. Yeah.
Yeah. So check it out, guys.
Mhm.
All right. So let's keep going. BDSM. Is it just for straight people?
Ew, no.
No. Shut up. Um, so the BDSM community is even more accepting of people who are sexually attracted to the same sex. In fact, according to the NCSF, 35 35% of BDSM practitioners identify as bisexual as opposed to 2.8% of the overall population.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. So this article kind of dove into BDSM, identifying as BDSM, how that relates to the queer community, and the different labels and like different viewpoints.
Mm,
So let's kind of talk about those. It kind of explores both. It doesn't necessarily take a side, but I thought it was really interesting to know these different point of views that were out there. Um, so, in today's society, there's a growing number of gender identities. Many people find BDSM and kink as a sexual orientation in their own right. So, the author was talking about that there are some people who claim that the LGBT community should include the letter K
mm,
to include kink as gender identity, sexual identity.
Interesting.
Yeah. So there's a never-ending debate that we cannot solve. Or no, I don't know.
Well, I was just gonna say, yeah,
Go ahead.
I think it's super interesting because now, like, I've heard, just like on social media that people, refer to it like as the alphabet club because, like, all the letters are being
Oh,
added, which it's just, becoming more inclusive, right? And making
right.
sure that people feel, um, that they feel seen and not necessarily ignored, and it doesn't just stop at the T, right? Like there are
Yeah.
LGBTQIA plus,
Yep.
um and that plus is supposed to be all encompassing, but I do understand that, if you feel like you don't necessarily fit into those groups, it's a little bit tough to find where you fit. I don't know much about that, so I can't really say one way or the other. But yeah, is kink, would that be a sexual identity? I don't know. That's a good question. I'm not sure, but
Right. And I thought that was an interesting point because I hadn't thought about that. But if there are people who identify that way and we're
hmm,
trying to be inclusive, it's
hmm.
just an interesting thought to have. I don't know if I have enough information to say
Right,
you
fair.
should or shouldn't be
Yeah,
included. That's not my choice.
right, right.
But I thought it was interesting that, this is a conversation that is being had.
Oh yeah, definitely. Especially as a group that has been, historically marginalized for having interests in different types of intimacy, that go far beyond just, yeah, like what we see in mainstream media, which is like whips and things like that, like the Rihanna song, or something like that. It's like
Right.
BDSM has a lot more ties to a person's identity rather than just something that they only practice in the bedroom because they want to be like crazy or something like that,
Right.
like there's a lot more
That's
that
true.
goes into it. So yeah,
Yeah.
I could see that.
That's a good point. So the BDSM movement and the LGBT community had one thing in common in the 20th century. Public opinion considered them morally wrong. Nevertheless, BDSM was still a straight thing. But in the 80s, people became more sexually exploratory. Many facilities, such as swinger and kink clubs, became more and more present. Fetishes were no longer a sign of mental derangement, rather just sexual preference we as individuals have. With
Mm.
BDSM, people challenged the normative ways of having sex, during which this article I was telling Ryann, and I guess I'll keep it in here, but this is an opinion essay that someone wrote, but they did bring up a lot of good points. So some of this verbiage is coming from them directly, but it
Yeah.
says, um, normative ways of having sex during which a male puts his sword into a female sheath.
Oh.
Not my normal verbiage. So just want to
Oh,
let you guys
okay.
know where it's coming from.
Right. Especially with the traditional like dominant submissive relationship, it has a
Right.
lot to do with like the masculine feminine.
Right.
But if you know anything about just sexual preference in general, it doesn't always take that form, right? Like I said, a lot of times people who feel very dominant in their lives that may have masculine characteristics or something might want the complete opposite in the bedroom or something of varied, in the bedroom or, for intimacy. And so I think it's just about kind of breaking up those preconceived notions. Like it doesn't mean that just because I present dominant or I present masculine that I want to have those things portrayed in the bedroom as well, right? Like
Right.
what we portray to the outside world rarely has much influence on what we like to do behind closed doors or what we like to do when we're intimate because it might not be just between one person, right?
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, if anything, I feel like I've met more people that who are very powerful in their lives or, whatever, yeah, whatever they do in their day-to-day lives, they tend to be a lot more not necessarily submissive, but a lot more um like a less big version of themselves, in more intimate spaces. I'll say that. I've met a lot of
Mm-hmm.
people that tend to, yeah, kind of want to take the back seat, right? Like they control so much or they do so much in their regular lives that they want to have somebody else take the reins for something in their life.
Right. Which that's true. When you were saying that sentence, I was like, you're right. Sometimes it is exhausting. You just want someone to do it like for you.
Yeah. No, exactly. Yes,
To make it as
exactly.
simple as possible.
Right. No, exactly. Totally makes sense.
Yeah. So it goes on to say, and this is referring to that 80s comment. It says we had a growing number of straight men who like to be submissive, which I think is the kind of the stereotype that we're talking about, like the powerful, CEO goes to see the dominatrix who like,
Right.
and again, that's a stereotype, but I think
Yeah.
it is for a reason if we're just trying to think of like a pop culture reference in this
Yes.
case, in this
Right.
conversation.
Right.
So they would let a dominant girl top make or take chains and whips into her hands is what it says. So
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. This article also brought up gay men and leather,
Mm.
which we kind of touched on with the harnesses and things. So I
Hmm.
wanted to look at that a little bit and how, it related. So the leather movement today is mostly considered part of the BDSM community, but in fact, it comes from the LGBTQIA plus community, namely gay males. During World War II, many soldiers had their first homosexual experiences. After returning home from the war, they started accepting the new lifestyle and objected to mainstream fashion and culture. And then it did bring up the Marlon Brando example of the movie The Wild One from 1953, where he wears a motorcycle or a leather jacket on a motorcycle. And so that like image kind of took hold in like pop culture and in the
Mm.
media.
Okay.
And so this kind of independent masculinity, like leather jacket wearing motorcycle
Hmm.
idea came from, which we all know today.
Yeah. It's a
But
good
it
look.
was funny because it's a good look. It is, yeah. But it was saying that this is how gay motorcycle clubs became a thing, and then it made a joke about it was like, yes, Hell's Angels, you're a homosexual creation. Uh, but I thought that was interesting. And then it went on to talk about like how the first leather bar in the US was in Chicago in
Oh.
1958.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah. So BDSM and the queer community today. So it says, as is the case with the queer community, there are more people who don't feel the need to hide the fact that they like something different from the norm.
Hmm.
And there was some conversations online that I saw about like leather and kind of BDSM, like latex and leather. That's the word I was looking for.
Oh,
Being
okay.
worn at Pride, and some people are
Yeah.
like for it, and some are against it.
Yeah. I
It's
mean,
it's not always, which I didn't know it was that much of a conversation of yes and no.
yeah, but a lot of like the problems with it are like people that are claiming that like Pride is becoming like too quote unquote X-rated when like it's really frustrating because a lot of things that we just think are inappropriate just actually aren't. Leather being worn is not inappropriate. We've put connotations with it and we've like made that a thing like that, oh, like it's
Right.
inappropriate, but it's just a fabric. Like it's just a fabric. And if you
Right.
have that much problem with whatever young impressionable kid seeing that, then like guess what? Like the internet exists. Like I don't know, that's not like
Right.
that's like a non-issue, but I did hear that happening at like LA Pride and I'm sure it happened other places where
Right.
people were basically like that's not appropriate, to wear and I'm like, "Oh, okay, but young people in booty shorts and doing whatever else they are is just so much more appropriate just because it's like jean material." Like that makes no sense.
Right. But your 10-year-old can wear a crop top. I don't know.
Yeah,
I
no,
was
it makes
wearing
no
like,
sense.
t-shirts with the Rugrats on them when I was 10,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah. No, it makes no
that
sense.
conversation has multiple sides.
Yeah.
So,
Exactly. Let them wear latex. Who cares?
yes, yes. We'll make a shirt.
Yeah. Yes.
um, so so to wrap this up, the article kind of was just making the point about wherever you stand, there is still that school of thought like should the kink be regarded as a separate sexual orientation or not. So I
Mm.
just thought that was interesting to bring up. And obviously, these two things do, have very like intertwined history.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but I'd be curious what you guys think. Should the K be added?
Yeah, I want to know more about this. This is super
Yeah,
interesting. I'd like to meet somebody that is a little bit more experienced than obviously us. I mean, we have very little experience, but I would like
right.
to meet somebody that is in these spaces that, it's being talked about as like more than just a sexual preference or an intimate preference, but it really is a part of their identity and they feel, that like not necessarily a person that thinks it should be recognized as a sexual orientation or identity, but just someone that feels very immersed in this community and like what that kind of looks like for them. You know what I mean? Because it
Yeah.
is specific. I mean, I'm sure, like, I can tell you just from experience, like, on dating app profiles, and we're not talking about the profiles that you're looking to actually date, we're talking about the hookup profiles, like, kink is mentioned. Like, a lot of people that are into
Yeah.
kink, they will put it in their bios, I've seen it on Grindr profiles. I've seen it on, like, when I was on Tinder for the very short time that I was on Tinder, but I've seen it on there, and that is completely valid, I don't think that just
Yeah.
the average person would be like, "Oh, if we're going to get intimate, like, now are you ready for like my ropes?" Like you might be into it, but that's not something that would necessarily come out in just first date or even second date conversation,
Right.
right? You'd really
Right.
have to be wanting to get intimate with that person on a more serious level.
Yeah.
Because even for hookups, right? Like it's like I just came over here to have whatever, intimate or sexual interaction. That doesn't necessarily mean that I was going to be interested in whatever your kink is. So
Mm,
that's
right.
interesting.
That's true. No, that's true. And oh my gosh, that'd be cool if we could get someone who is in the BDSM community who's
Yes.
comfortable talking about it to come on the
Yeah.
show. So if you guys know anyone, let us know.
I know. Yeah. I'm
Or
doing
if
a
it's
research.
you, slide
Yeah.
into our DMs.
Yeah.
But no, on the other hand, I was gonna say there are also apps specifically. I mean, FetLife, we know, but
Mm.
there are other apps.
Yes.
So if you're seeing very subtle hints on the quote unquote normal apps, then
Yeah.
know that if this is something you're interested or into, do some more research because that
Oh,
was
okay.
brought up in some of the research that there
Yeah.
are different apps that you can go on more specifically for different kinks or fetishes.
Nice. Okay.
And to wrap it up, if you are getting your BDSM on, there are some terms to know. All right, so here are some common BDSM terms. So the first one is aftercare. So this is offering mental and physical care to your partner after BDSM.
Yeah.
All right. Next one is drop. So this is the feeling of being mentally or physically exhausted after BDSM.
Oh, okay. So kind of coming down from that high
Yes.
or, however you felt.
Right.
Hmm.
So the next one is dungeon, the location in which BDSM takes place.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. So the next one is fetish. Deriving sexual pleasure from a body part, object, or specific experience. Next one is hard limit. What a partner absolutely will not do during BDSM.
Mm.
Kink, which is any sexual practice that is non conventional,
Mm.
quote
Okay.
unquote. Let's put quotes around that. The next one is munch, and that is a often public party where people interested in BDSM can meet.
Oh,
So I
okay.
think it may
Okay.
be like a play on brunch. I'm not quite sure. What do you think?
Oh, okay. Okay. Interesting.
Yeah,
All
I'm gonna have
right.
to look that one up. The next one is protocol. So the rules that sexual partners agree to follow during BDSM.
Mm.
The next one is scene, SCENE, which is a term used to describe the BDSM encounter.
Oh, interesting.
So
Okay. And using the verbiage like this also can kind of maybe like allow you to put your regular inhibitions aside, right? Like, oh,
yeah,
we're just doing this in the dungeon because what happens in the dungeon stays in the dungeon.
stays in the
But
dungeon.
but you know what I mean? I could see these terms really helping people to detach from their preconceived notions and just being like, well,
Right.
we're doing this here. So I kind of that. That's a good way to compartmentalize because not everyone feels so comfortable or oh so inclined to just have their regular day-to-day person there. You might
Right.
have an alter ego that really likes this, and you just kind of want to get into this as this intimate person in this moment, you know? So I
Right.
like that. I like having those terms for it. That's cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, that's a good point. The next one is soft limit. So a behavior or action the partner is hesitant to do but may try.
Mm.
So this is your yellow light.
Mm-hmm.
And the last one is switch. So this is changing dominant and submissive positions during BDSM.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Now you're talking.
Ryan likes a little switch up.
And I'm like, I'm
Ah,
tired. Switch.
yeah. You're right. All right. So those are the common terms to know if you're interested in getting into BDSM.
Yeah.
All right, time for the big question, Ryan. Are we doing this wrong?
Now I just want to harness. I don't even care if I'm doing it wrong.
I want to go buy one of those ropes for the.
Yeah, I know. Practice some Shibari.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
yeah, I feel like this is like one of the first episodes, even though we're not experts on any of them. Let's just be
Mm,
clear. This is one of the first ones where I feel like I just want to know more. I feel like I've
yeah.
always wanted to know more about BDSM. And like we talked about on the fetish episode, you know, like during Pride when we used to go, we went like, for like 6 years straight. We would always go. It's ironic going 6 years straight to a gay pride. Uh, but we would always go to the BDSM room, right? Like
Yeah.
that was always so interesting. And again,
Yeah.
it wasn't like we're all sitting there like, you know, like wetting ourselves. I mean, I'm sure some people were, but
Right.
we were just like really interested in like all the different tools that they had available and like
Right.
flogging just as like you know, an act itself, but also like a show, you know, like you're
Yeah.
watching this act being done. But I wasn't necessarily like getting off on it. I'm just thinking like I'm interested to like think like I'm interested in what the person being flogged is thinking. I'm interested in what the person doing the flogging is thinking. Like, you know, how do you learn how to do that practice, you know? It's not just picking up leather and like doing it, you know? Like you really have to like learn your rhythm. So, yeah, I think I don't know if I'm doing it wrong, but I want to do it more. I want to learn more.
Yes. Okay.
Yeah.
I have the same opinion. I think doing this research and like we said from at the top of the show, BDSM just in mainstream feels kind of overwhelming or
Mhm.
intimidating, right?
Intimidating. Yeah.
So I think doing this research and hopefully you guys kind of got this too, like it can really be one, a spectrum, and two,
Mhm.
you can start small. Like if you
Right.
want to start, if you are curious, don't think that you have to go, like build a dungeon and, buy all the chains and whips. Like
Yeah.
there are really so many like different practices. And that's
Yes.
why I brought up the Shibari because it's creative. It deals with mindfulness and like
Mm.
art and bodywork and expression. And so
Yeah.
I thought it was really interesting to see those different aspects. So I too am more curious.
Yes, I know. It just brings up more questions. So
Exactly.
I think we're
Ah,
doing it right.
yes. Well, if you guys are curious too, definitely check out the show notes, check out the visual conversation, and check out that video on YouTube.
Yes.
Um, Otherwise, that wraps up this week's episode. We hope you guys had as much fun with this conversation as we did. Go get yourself a blindfold. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And
So,
don't forget to rate, review, subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. Hit us up on YouTube for the visual conversation. Leave a comment, you know. Give us some videos, some suggestions in our DMs
mhm.
on Instagram at Wrong the Podcast. And if you have any questions or comments or recommendations for us on any of the, you know, topics that we talked about, email us at wrongthepodcast@gmail.com. And otherwise, we are back, folks. Super excited to put out some more new content. And yeah, we'll see you in the next episode.